Hello, and welcome to KRAD COVID readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, here to read my writings to cure the coronavirus blues. This time around, I'm going to be reading another Dragon Precinct story, because I have a lot of them. This is one of the more recent ones I've done. It was in an anthology that was put out by Fantastic Books called Release the Virgins! The sole theme of this anthology is that somewhere in the story must have the phrase, release the virgins. Beyond that, there is no unifying theme at all. And there's a lot of genres represented in this particular story. We've got David Gerald, Alan Steele, Lawrence Watt Evans, Daniel Kimmel, Sharon Lee and Steve Miller, Alex Schwartzman, Matt Bechtel, Sherry Ann Lewitt, Gordon Linsner, Gail Z. Martin, Jody Lynn Nye, Beth W. Patterson, Hildy Silverman, Patrick Thomas, Cecilia Tan, Brian Trent, and me. And again, this anthology is out from Fantastic Books, and this is my contribution to it, which is, as I said, a Dragon Precinct story called The Midwinter of Our Discontent. What are all these people doing in my crime scene? Lieutenant Danthres Tressilian was already in a foul mood. She trudged through snow that ranged from ankle-deep to hip-deep, all the way from the castle where the Cliffs End Castle Guard was headquartered. Now she stood in one of the largest rooms in the Amsoiré Arms, an inn located just off the Riverwalk, the border between Goblin Precinct, the city-state slum, and Mermaid Precinct, the Docklands, which was completely full. 4 women dressed in white robes and 3 men in black robes, the latter trio kneeling next to a bed on which lay the body of a 4th man in black robes. Danthres was there because of that dead body, as her job as a lieutenant in the castle guard was to investigate crimes committed in the domain. One of the guards was assigned to Goblin Precinct. Danthres didn't care enough to remember his name, was standing by the threshold. "I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but the acolytes won't leave." Frowning, Danthres asked, "Acolytes?" "Yeah, apparently the dead guy's a high priest of something, and these are his chief acolytes. They've been kneeling around the bed this whole time." "Fine, what about them?" She indicated the 4 women with her head. "We can't get them out of the room." The guard pointed at one of the women's hands. "See those bracelets? They're like the ones on the prison barge." Peering more closely, Danthres noticed that all 4 women were wearing metal bracelets inscribed with runes. Prisoners who served their sentence in Manticore Precinct, the prison barge that sailed out in the Garamond Sea, wore similar bracelets. If the wearer left the confines of the barge, the bracelets became extremely heavy. "These," the guard said, "are magic so that they can't leave this room. The only one who can change it is Father Gribnall." "Who would be the body?" Danthres asked. The guard nodded. A flash of light, and then a short, squat figure appeared, wearing a black linen shirt that was too small on him and brown pants that were too big. "I'm impressed, Benin," Danthres said as she blinked away the spots from her eyes that were the effects of the teleport spell. "You usually just teleport away from a scene." "I don't usually have to wade through snow. I'll be very pleased when this wretched season passes." "Could be worse," the guard said. "We could live in Barlin. Winter lasts there several months, not just a couple of weeks." Benin pointedly ignored the guard, an action Danthres silently approved of, and instead asked, "Where is your partner?" Danthres sighed. The plight of the partner in question, Lieutenant Torin Van Wiveld, was part of why she was so cranky. Stuck in his house, as a snowdrift has blocked the door and windows to the entire building. Typical. Benin shook his head and reached into the pouch on his belt to remove the herbs he'd need to cast an inanimate residue spell. As the magical examiner assigned to the castle guard, one of his primary functions was to cast that peelback spell, which showed what happened in a space in the past, to determine how a crime was committed. It was one of the most useful investigatory tools the castle guard had. "I'll need all these people to leave." "We'll need your help with that," Danthres said. "These women are all wearing bracelets that keep them in the room." One of the women, a short blonde who looked like she had only just hit puberty, spoke up. "We've been stuck here for a week." "Yeah, we want out," said one of the 2 redheads. Benin waddled over to one of the redheads and asked, "May I inspect the bracelets, please?" She held out her arm, and Benin studied it. Then he let out a very long sigh, which did not encourage Danthres in the least. These bracelets are magicked in such a manner as to only be controlled by one person. Danthres pointed at the corpse, who was lying dead over there. I assumed as much. Another sigh. I will need to break the connection. And then you can cast the peel back, Danthres asked. I can attempt it, but if these women were here when the crime happened? Bodine glanced at the four women. The blonde shrugged. He was asleep. We woke up and Father Gribnall was all, dead. Then I'm afraid the peel back won't work. The bracelets will interfere with it. Wonderful, Danthres muttered. I hate magic. I don't like it neither, the blonde said. An acolyte stood up. The virgins would be silent. One of the redheads, and the fourth, a woman with close-cropped black hair, both flinched and shrunk toward the wall. The other redhead just swallowed, while the blonde rolled her eyes. Danthres stared at the acolyte. Virgins? Yes, of course. The acolyte seemed confused by Danthres' surprise. Why else would they be dressed in white? The minutiae of fashion was something Danthres had never cared much about. She ignored the question and asked one of her own. Why are you carting around 4 virgins and keeping them imprisoned? They're not imprisoned. Are 2, the blonde said. Be silent, another acolyte snapped. Everyone, be silent, Danthres shouted. The brunette raised a braceleted hand. Excuse me, but I need to pee. Danthres glanced over at the open doorway on the far side of the room, which led to the privy. The door had been removed from its hinges, she noted. So go ahead, don't let me stop you. I can't go when other people are watching. Frowning, Danthres said, You've been stuck in this room for a week, you said. What have you been doing? Going when everybody's asleep. Then you should be used to holding it during the day. Danthres then turned to the guard and pointed at the acolytes. Take those 3 outside. We can't leave Father Gribnall's side, one of the acolytes said. Danthres walked right up to the acolyte in question, who was rather short. For her part, while Danthres didn't have every aspect of her father's heritage, she did have the great height that was common to elves. She loomed directly over him and put her gloved hand on the hilt of her sword for good measure. Can't you? Another acolyte grabbed the short one by the arm. We will comply, of course, Lieutenant, and my apologies for Brother Carrand. As the guard escorted the 3 acolytes into the hallway, Bodine mixed some herbs in a pestle, made a grand gesture with one hand, and a spray of sparks burst forth. 2 seconds later, the bracelets all fell off the women's arms and hit the floor with 4 resounding clunks. Finally, the blonde said. The brunette blinked. Wait, we can leave the room? We're free? Danthres shook her head. You can leave the room, but I'm afraid you're not free to go anywhere just yet. She turned to the magical examiner. Bodine, you're sure the peel back won't work? Completely. If it was just 1 bracelet, I might be able to reconstruct a clear picture. But 4 bracelets? In the room for a week? He shook his head. Fine, then can you use whatever magical stuff you're saving by not casting that spell and expand your teleport spell to get the acolytes and the virgins to the castle? I suppose. Bodine sounded incredibly reluctant, but then he glanced at the women in their very thin white robes. They'd probably catch ill if they had to go on foot through the snow. Have one of the guards put them in the interrogation rooms. I'll be by later to talk to them. Very well. As Bodine escorted the women into the hallway, Danthres went to the bed, grateful to have finally cleared the room. She caught the flash of Bonine's teleport spell in her peripheral vision. Father Gribnall slept in his full robes, apparently. Now that all the people were gone, Danthres got a better look at the room in general and saw that there were 5 pallets on the floor. From the looks of it, the 3 acolytes got their own pallets, while the women had to double up. As for Gribnall himself, the blue tinge on his lips indicated poison. Danthres glanced around the room and found a small bottle on the nightstand. Grabbing it and sniffing it, she smelled only lavender, but that could easily have been used to mask the poison. Placing the bottle in a pouch on her belt, she checked the rest of the room, but found only a bunch of scrolls written in a language Danthres didn't recognize, and a large coin she recognized as a voucher for passengers on a ship. According to the etching on the coin, it was for 8 people on the Alartnev. The guard came back into the room and asked, Anything else you need, Lieutenant? Send for a detail of guards to bring the body to the castle, and these scrolls and coin also. Once we figure out which language it's in, It's 8-Trock. Excuse me? Danthres shot the guard a look. Shaking visibly, the guard stammered. It's what they used to speak in Barland back in the old days. Haven't seen anything written in it in ages. Impressed that there was someone at the rank of guard who was literate, Danthres asked, "Can you read the scrolls?" The guard restored Danthres' lack of faith by shaking his head. "Afraid not. It's been ages. The top one of one scroll says Raybar, but that's all I can tell you." "What's a Raybar?" "No idea, but I remember seeing it etched into the facade of one of the buildings back home in Barland. But I haven't been back there since I was a kid." "All right," Danthres sighed. "Take care of this, will you? I'm gonna head back to the castle." "Lieutenant, why didn't you teleport with the ME?" Danthres shuddered. "Teleporting makes me throw up. Better to walk through the snow." While the slog back to the castle in the snow made Danthres' mood even worse, it was leavened by the sight of her partner in the squad room. Lieutenant Torin Benwivel rose from his chair upon Danthres' entry into the large room in the east wing of the castle, and said, "There you are!" "There I am! I had despaired of seeing you before the thaw." A smile peeking through his thick red beard, Torin said, "Several guards from Dragon Precinct dug my house out, thus enabling me to finally come to the work. This is the latest I've ever reported for a shift." Wandering through the squad room, his green cloak billowing behind him as he shuffled scrolls about, Sergeant Jonas said snidely, "And given how late you usually are, that's saying something." "Thank you, Jonas. In any event, I assume that these 7 people Benin delivered an hour ago are our new case?" Danthres nodded. "Father Gribnall of some religion or other, possibly related to something called Raybar, died in his room in the Amswari Arms, a room he shared with all of our current guests." Danthres filled in her partner on the rest of what she knew, which wasn't nearly enough, though it did remind her that she had a bottle in her pouch. Pulling it out, she handed it to Jonas. "See that Benin gets this, please, Jonas? I need to know if there's poison in it. And find out if anyone in the castle knows how to read Atroc. We've got some scrolls in that language, and I want to know what they say." "Of course," the sergeant said, and he departed, green cloak continuing to billow behind him. "So, assuming he was poisoned," Torin said, "any of the 7 of them could have done it." Danthres nodded. "My money's on one of the women, since they were imprisoned. Let's talk to them, see which one lies the most. Best we split the interviews, otherwise we really will be here until the thaw." "Agreed. I'll take 2 of the women and 2 of the acolytes. You take the others?" Torin nodded. "My name is Winna. I'm from Wervin. It's a small town outside Barland." Torin leaned forward as the redhead was speaking in a low whisper. "What brought you together with Father Gribnall and his acolytes?" he asked in a gentle voice. "My parents told me that Father Gribnall had chosen me for a holy mission. You see, he's our pastor. My family has worshipped Raybar since forever, really. I suppose I do, too. I never really thought about it much." "And what was the mission they asked you to go on?" "Oh, they didn't ask. They ordered me. And, well, they're my parents. It would be disrespectful to disobey." "Very well, then," Torin said patiently. What was the mission they ordered you to go on?" "To help in the revitalization of Raybar." "And you went willingly?" Winna nodded. "Then why did they put the bracelet on you to keep you in the room?" "I honestly don't know. Whatever they wanted me to do, I was going to do it. My parents said so." "We're just waiting for the thaw so that the ships can sail again." Danthres sighed as she sat across from Brother Carond, the short acolyte who had snapped at the women. "Yes, I gathered that. The port's been effectively shut down for a fortnight. You're sailing on the Alartnev?" Carond nodded. "And where are you going?" "On a holy mission!" Danthres closed her eyes and sighed. "I meant geographically, not philosophically." "Oh, yes, of course. To Vikes Isle, to restart the volcano." After a moment, Danthres recalled that Vikes was a tiny island on the Garmin that included a dormant volcano and very little else. "Why would you restart the volcano? For that matter, how would you restart the volcano?" Carond's mouth hung open. Which question should I answer first?" "Pick one," Danthres said through gritted teeth. Well, the why is simple. To appease the great god Raybar and show everyone in Flingaria that he is a god to be reckoned with." It was Danthres' considered opinion that everyone in Flingaria would need to know who Raybar was first, but she let that go, instead asking, And how? Sacrificing the virgins, of course. Father Gribnall was the only one who kept the faith, you know. Torin nodded at Brother Q Fortier. That would be faith in the god Raybar. You've heard of us! Fortier leaned forward eagerly. That's good, that's very good. We've been trying so hard to drum up interest. That's why we're going on this mission, you see. We were hoping to get to Vikes right at Midwinter, but the Garriman had to go and freeze. Fortier chuckled. Father Gribnall actually considered the possibility of walking to Vikes on the ice, but I was able to talk him down from that. The virgins would have frozen to death in those light robes of theirs. You could perhaps have given them something warmer? Torin tried to make his suggestion sound kind rather than snotty, but he wasn't entirely sure that he succeeded. However, Fortier seemed to take it in the kind spirit. Oh, I wanted to, believe me, but Father Gribnall wouldn't hear of it. The four of them had to remain in the pure white robes in order for the ritual to be performed properly. The scrolls were very specific on the subject. Once all four are sacrificed in the proper manner, the volcano will restart, and Raybar will make his presence known in Flingaria once more. Torin refrained from pointing out that he just confessed to intent to commit murder 4 times over. I ain't actually a virgin, you know? Danthres stared at the blonde. Excuse me? I ain't a virgin. Everyone thinks that because I look so young, but I'm in my 30s. I slept with plenty of men and women. You see, part of the act is I pretend like I'm a virgin. Act? Danthres asked, silently impressed with whatever glamour the blonde was using to make her look young and innocent. The blonde sighed. My name's Katie. I work for Layla's in Wervin. It's the biggest sex emporium this side of the river. Clients are always asking for me when they want, you know, the virgin experience. So these idiots kidnapped you thinking you were a virgin. Brother Charon's one of my regulars. I've been trying to explain that it's an act, but if he don't believe that I'd lie, because that'd be an affront to Raybar, if you can believe that. Having spoke to Charon, I can believe it. So, can I go home now? I got clients back home who are probably wanting me back. Not just yet, Danthres said. After talking to all their suspects, Danthres and Torin had them held in custody for further questioning. When they objected, Danthres tartly pointed out that they'd been stuck in the same room for a week, both by the bracelets and by the weather. They could last a few hours in a different room. It has to be one of the women, Danthres said. They were on their way to their doom. That's definitely motive. I don't think they knew. I only spoke to 2 of them, but they seemed completely ignorant of their actual fate. They just thought they were participating in a ritual. One that required them to be magically imprisoned. And Katie, the blonde, she's older and smarter than she seems. Oh, and she also isn't a virgin, so whatever absurd ritual Gribnall had in mind wouldn't have worked. A voice came from the entrance to the squad room. It wouldn't have worked anyhow. Danthres turned to see Zar, one of Lord Doval's secretaries. I'm sorry? Zar was holding the scrolls in her arms. I learned Atark as a girl. These scrolls have nothing to do with any rituals. But they are about Raybar, Torin asked. Nodding, Zar said, yes, but they're financial paperwork about how the High Church of Raybar owed more than 1,000 gold in back taxes, as well as various transcripts of court documents. Nothing about a ritual. If one of the acolytes discovered that the scrolls didn't outline the ritual as Father Gribnall claimed, Torin said, then they might also have motive to murder the priest. Jonas came in there. Then, you'll both be happy to know that the bottle you brought back from the crime scene did indeed have poison in it. Unfortunately, thanks to the bracelets, Benin cannot magically determine who last touched the bottle. He tried a minor peel back on the bottle itself, but the only people he could tell for sure had touched it were you, Danthres, and me. Danthres sighed. Wonderful! So everyone had opportunity, and everyone had motive. We could just arrest all 7 of them, Torin said with a grin. Don't tempt me. Another voice came from the entryway, this one of the guards assigned to the castle. Lieutenants? Danthres turned to see the guard holding Katie's arm in one hand and Charon's in the other. Charon had a cut on his lip. What happened? She asked. The acolyte tried to, kidnap the Virgin, and the Virgin, smacked him in the face. Don't you understand? Charon said to Katie. We can be together, finally! Together? Danthres and Katie both asked at the same time. Katie added, You get that I'm a prostitute, right? Oh, I know you worked in that place to pay the bills, but that won't be necessary now. I saved up some silver for a rainy day, and now that Father Gribnall's out of the way... Out of the way, Torin asked. Charon whirled on Torin. I mean, that is, now that Father Gribnall has been tragically called to Raybar, You killed him, didn't you? Danthres asked. No, never! I would never pour poison down his throat like that. He closed his eyes. Damn! Danthres looked at the guard. We have these two. Go fetch the other 3 women and the other 2 acolytes. Nodding, the guard took his leave to perform that task. Charon held up his arms. Look, I just wanted to be with Katie so we could live in connubial bliss. If he sacrificed her to Raybar, we'd never be together. I tried to convince him the ritual wouldn't work because Katie wasn't a virgin. You knew? Danthres asked. Well, of course, I'm not an idiot. Somehow, Danthres refrained from responding to that. Charon went on. Even if she was a virgin when we met, she obviously wasn't after we had sex several dozen times. I kept saying that we could find another virgin, but Father Gribnall would insist. So you killed him, Torin said. No! I mean, yes, obviously, Charon's shoulders slumped. Damn! As the guard brought the other 5 in, Katie said, You shitbrain! You really think I was gonna run away with you? Charon blinked and stared at her, tears welling up in his eyes. You mean you weren't? Torin stepped forward. Brother Charon, you are under arrest for the murder of Father Gribnall, and for the intent to commit the murder of Katie, Winna, Thamoa, and Vul. I had no intention of killing Katie, don't you understand? I wanted to... You still murdered Father Gribnall, Torin added. Brother Fortier looked mortified, as did the other acolyte. Charon, how could you? He was finally going to bring Raybar back to Flingaria and glory! How exactly was killing 4 innocent women going to accomplish that? Danthres asked. It was all spelled out in the financial documents, Torin said with a grin. That's what those scrolls were, according to our expert. He indicated Tsar with his head. Fortier blinked. Father Gribnall said they were sacred texts. Only to an accountant. Danthres couldn't resist a smirk. The rest of us are free to go, then? Fortier asked. Shaking her head, Danthres said, I'm afraid not. You're all under arrest for intent to commit murder. Oh, Katie said. What the hell? We were the ones going to be murdered. She's right, Torin said. Brother Charon confessed to Father Gribnall's murder, and it was these 2, he indicated Fortier and the other acolyte with a gesture, that intended to throw them into the volcano. True, Danthres sighed. Fine. Release the virgins. We'll just arrest these 2 shitbrains. I told you I ain't no virgin, Katie cried. And that's that. There's some really hilarious stories in here. And some serious, I think there's a couple serious ones, but yes, they're all absolutely delightful. You can get Release the Virgins from Fantastic Books. You can check me out online at DeCandido.net. You can support me on Patreon, which would be wonderful. I've already gotten 1 new supporter when I started pimping this at the beginning of the reading. I probably should have done that this time too. But there's all sorts of wonderful stuff on Patreon. TV reviews, movie reviews, cat pictures, excerpts from work in progress, vignettes featuring my original characters, including several Dragon Precinct stories, and also first looks at my first drafts. So please do check that out at patreon.com/crad. And you can also read my blog at decandido.wordpress.com. Thank you very much for watching, and please stay safe.